Welcome to The Explainer. I am so excited to dive into today's topic with you. Now, I want you to start by just picturing this. You're deep in the humid, green heart of the Central American rainforest. The canopy is thick, the air is heavy, and suddenly, rising out of the dense jungle vines, you see these colossal stone pyramids. Silent, abandoned cities. For centuries, the magnificent plazas and temples of the classic Maya were basically a forgotten world, just a massive mystery swallowed up by the earth.
And that brings us to one of history's absolute greatest unsolved puzzles. Why did the Maya abandon their cities? So today we're going to play historical detectives. We're launching a full investigation into why a brilliant civilization, one that totally dominated the intellectual and artistic landscape of the Americas for nearly 1,000 years, just suddenly unraveled. And to figure out their fall, we actually first need to understand how we even know about them today. Section 1. Discovering the Silent Cities. To really grasp the magnitude of this whole mystery, we actually need to travel back to the 19th century. When these sprawling jungle ruins were first being whispered about by local woodsmen, the outside world literally didn't believe them. The prevailing myth back then? Well, folks thought that no indigenous American civilization could possibly have built such wonders. People actually believed these cities must have been constructed by ancient Egyptians or maybe lost tribes of Israel. Crazy, right? But that prejudice was completely shattered in 1839 by an American lawyer named John Lloyd Stevens and a British architect, Frederick Catherwood. They went on this utterly grueling expedition through suffocating rainforests and active civil war zones. When they finally hacked their way into a clearing in Honduras, they found towering stone monuments. Stevens immediately realized the truth. This was a uniquely American civilization. He was actually so convinced of its profound historical value that he purchased the entire lost city from a local landowner for exactly $50. $50 for a whole city.
Section 2. Corn, Kings, and Cosmos.
Okay, so to understand why they collapsed, we really have to look at the sheer heights of their golden age. The classic Maya weren't just surviving in the jungle, they were mastering it. They built a society deeply intertwined with agriculture, powerful rulers, and the stars. Take the number 0, for instance. The Maya independently invented the mathematical concept of zero, which is a monumental intellectual leap that even the ancient Romans never made. And this allowed them to calculate into the millions and create these interlocking calendar systems of just breathtaking accuracy. They tracked the movements of Venus, predicted eclipses, and basically aligned their entire society with what they saw as the sacred, predictable machinery of the cosmos.
But right at the center of this cosmic machinery was a human figure, the Kahul Ajau, or Holy Lord. Now, this wasn't just a politician. He was a divine shaman. See, the Maya relied entirely on seasonal rains to grow their lifeblood, corn or maize. To bring those rains, the king had to perform sacred bloodletting rituals, literally piercing his own flesh, often his tongue or his ears, with a stingray spine, offering his blood to the gods. It was this incredibly fragile cosmic bargain. The people fed the king, and the king's blood fed the gods to bring the rain. The whole agricultural society basically rested entirely on this deeply held belief.
And they recorded everything in a logosyllabic script. Now, for a long time, modern scholars thought these beautiful glyphs were just, mystical pictures of peaceful stargazers. But thanks to brilliant historical detectives like Tatiana Preskryakov in the 1960s, the code was finally cracked. It turned out these glyphs represented whole words and phonetic syllables. And once we could actually read them, well, the stones began to speak. They revealed not a peaceful utopia, but real, gritty human histories filled with intense political drama, royal marriages, and incredibly violent rivalries between great city-states. Section 3. The Unraveling.
All right, having established this amazingly complex, flourishing world, let's move to the first hard clues of the collapse. Kind of like forensic archaeologists, we can read the sudden silence in the stone records to see exactly when and how the gears of this civilization just ground to a halt. For centuries, Maya kings obsessively marked important dates on massive stone monuments. But then, suddenly, the writing stops. 799 AD at Palenque,
822 AD at Copan, 869 AD at the superpower city of Tikal. One by one, the cities fall silent. The public voice of the divine kings was rapidly and chillingly extinguished. And right at the same time, archaeologists find massive palaces left half-finished, stone blocks just abandoned in quarries. The very engine of society was breaking down.
And the nature of their conflicts completely changed too. Classic Maya warfare was highly ritualized. It was mostly about capturing rival elites for sacrifice to appease the gods. But in the late collapse period, the art and the archaeology reveal a descent into total chaos. We see desperate total war. Cities that were once open and confident suddenly threw up crude defensive walls and moats. Mass graves start to appear. The highly structured ritual warfare literally spun out of control into a terrifying, devastating fight for everyday survival.
Section 4. A perfect storm. So, why did the violence escalate so drastically? Well, the scientific evidence reveals the Maya weren't just fighting each other. They were fighting a losing battle against their own environment. And tragically, their wounds were largely self-inflicted. The staggering environmental cost of their architectural success played a massive role here. Think about this. Maya pyramids were covered in brilliant, dazzling white lime plaster. To create that plaster, they had to burn limestone at incredibly high temperatures, which meant using massive amounts of green wood as fuel. Making the plaster for just one pyramid at Tikal required felling nearly 1,000 acres of pristine forest. 1,000 acres! The tragic irony is that their very success, their booming populations, and their architectural arms race stripped the landscape bare, causing massive soil erosion and destroying their own fertile farmland.
The full picture really comes together when we look at the environmental data. Lake bed sediments show us the undeniable evidence of widespread deforestation and soil erosion. But look at the bottom row, mega drought. By analyzing gypsum in lakes and oxygen isotopes in cave stalagmites, scientists proved that right around 750 AD, a century-long severe megadrought hit the region. When you combine endemic warfare, massive deforestation, and a crippling megadrought, well, you get an undeniable, devastating perfect storm that struck an already severely overstressed society.
So, the crucial point here is this deadly feedback loop. Step 1, the severe megadrought hits. Step 2, the carefully engineered reservoirs dry up and those vital maize crops fail. Step 3, the divine kings perform their desperate bloodletting rituals, but the sky remains silent, the rain just doesn't come. Step 4, because the cosmic bargain is broken, society entirely loses faith in the divine kingship. The whole social contract is shattered. And finally, step 5, the great cities are abandoned. Climate change utterly broke their political and religious foundations.
Section 5. The Great Exodus.
You know, it's really easy to get lost in the massive data points and timelines, but we have to humanize this collapse. Think about the deeply personal choices faced by starving commoners who had spent generations living in the shadow of these massive pyramids. This quote really captures the profound sadness of the reality. They abandoned the great stone cities and the holy lords who had failed them, melting back into the jungle. This wasn't some sudden fiery apocalypse where a foreign empire burned everything to the ground. No, it was a slow, agonizing fading. Just imagine a single family. Their crops are withered, their reservoirs are totally dry, and they're terrified of the escalating warfare. In the middle of the night, they pack up what little they have, turn their backs on the gods and kings who failed them, and just slip away into the forest to try and find a place where the corn might still grow.
Section 6. The Maya endure.
Now, prepare for the biggest twist of our investigation today. We are going to decisively bust the myth that the Maya people went extinct. The collapse was centered in the southern lowlands, but during what we call the Northern Transformation, the culture bent, but it absolutely did not break. The center of gravity just shifted north to the Yucatan Peninsula. Cities like the magnificent Chichen Itza actually thrived after the southern collapse. How? Well, they adapted. They moved away from that precarious reliance on intensive maize farming and divine kingship, and instead, they built robust, resilient maritime trade networks along the coasts. They survived by profoundly changing their way of life. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate proof of their survival. 7 million. Over 7 million Maya people are alive today, living in Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. They are absolutely not a vanished race. They are a living, breathing people who survived the collapse of their golden age, survived the centuries that followed, and continue to speak the ancient languages and maintain their sacred traditions to this very day.
This history really holds up the Maya as a mirror to us right now. Will our modern resource-hungry civilization survive its own shifting climate? Or will we leave behind our own silent cities? The Maya pushed their fragile environment to its absolute limit, and a shifting climate was the final blow that brought their incredible cities to a halt. It is a powerful, echoing, cautionary tale about environmental limits and sustainability. So what lessons will we choose to learn from the silent cities of the jungle? Thank you so much for exploring this mystery with me today in this explainer.